here.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks to you and Jordan for inviting me, and Allison to encourage me to be here. Dan mentioned a little bit about the center we started at the law school. And a couple of things that I want to say just as a preface. First of all, calling it a center in the traditional academic sense is a little bit misleading because it is not a research center, which is also why I didn't say data thus far. I've said anecdata, which is something I stole from one of the consultants that works with us. This is going to be the sum and substance of the work that we've done through our process, which I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to, and I'm hoping that focusing a little more on the legal services quality and innovation side than necessarily technology side for purposes of what we've been doing, that'll be helpful to spur further conversation. I also want to apologize. I need to head out after this. I was just telling Allison that I checked my email. This is the day before finals start, so you students will appreciate this. And I have currently around 40 very frantic emails from students asking questions before the cutoff. So I apologize for that. A little bit about what we do. So it's not a center. One of the mandates that Dan gave me, one of the priors he set for the work that we do is that even though we're calling it a center, as I said, it's not a center in the traditional sense of academia. The mandate, the prior, was that it be a doing center and not a talking center. So while we have folks come in and speak, and we're working on conferences now, we have one coming up in the beginning of May. The focus of what we do is functioning as an incubator. This is an idea that came out of our last strategic planning process that Dan initiated almost immediately when you came in, right, Dan? And Dan asked me and a colleague to chair the Curriculum Innovation Task Force, and the charge was fairly broad. And I'll paraphrase a little bit, but it was essentially the world has considerably changed since the economic downturn, and there are three sides to sort of the relationship in the legal services sector. One is the consumers of legal services, the other is providers of legal services, and the other is the law schools. So strictly in the service providing aspect of it, those are the three sides to that triangle. And clients are certainly driving change, we noted at that time, and law firms are slowly responding, but responding largely because their clients are demanding it. But law firms, Dan and the rest of us noted, we were not really responding. We were tinkering around the edges a little bit, and we needed to move faster and do more. And what we did as a task force, we were a traditional academic task force. We sat around, we benchmarked, we looked at the research that was out there, and the one thing that we came up with was that we really didn't know. Right? None of us, even those of us who had practiced law before we came to the academy, didn't really know what skill sets and aptitudes our students should be learning in law school now in the changed environment. And we needed to create a space in the law school to really ask those questions. And so we created a space and a system to engage the legal services sector, to dialogue on drivers of change in the marketplace and design educational responses to them. One of the large-scale observations that we made is that we didn't want to do this. We didn't want to engage a process in a way that was traditionally academic, that was traditionally top-down, Aristotelian, et cetera, and that if we were going to be thinking about the drivers of change, including technology, including massive kinds of process innovations, that we should think about what we're doing and the problems and opportunities we're trying to address and the opportunities we're trying to exploit in the same way that those drivers of change are doing it. So we developed a system that is modeled very much on what's going on. I tried to educate myself at least a little bit on design thinking and what those processes look like, and put a design process together for the center that mimicked some of those things. So we started from the idea that a curriculum is a knowledge building system or architecture, and that innovating that system or architecture should follow design principles. And we developed a design year following 5 really basic design principles that everyone here is familiar with. So it comes as no shock, but I'm using it as a structure to let you know that about what we're doing before I get to the anecdata part, to let you know what the marketplace has been telling us through our first 2.5 iterations of our design process. So we define. We learn from people. We have impaneled an advisory board that we meet initially every year. The advisory board currently has about 24 individuals on it. We have tried to be as diverse as possible, experientially diverse as possible, a diversity of perspective as possible. We have representatives on that board who are new to the practice of law, senior attorneys. We have people from the knowledge management, attorney talent development fields. We have external attorney talent development consultants on that. We have GCs. We have service platform folks. I'm hoping to have another legal tech person on the advisory board very shortly, coming out of this meeting, and at least 2. But we try to do. We need to do a little bit more with the judiciary. We need to do a little bit more with public interest, getting those folks around the table. We tried to be as diverse as possible from the perspectives, thinking about the legal services sector in as broad a way as possible. We meet in the fall. We meet in the fall, and we decide on what opportunity or challenge are we going to address for that design year. And we start ideating certain questions that we want to put out into the marketplace. So the next step is research. We find patterns. We host a fall forum. We have currently an active network of a little more than 200 individuals. We've certainly reached out to a hell of a lot more. But the folks that regularly respond, that give us input, who attend our forums, not all. We usually hit around 40 or 50 folks coming to the forum. Still relatively diverse, need to increase that number. We are moving next year from having 1 forum at the law school to having 3 forums around the country, so that we will be able to get more participants if it's more geographically convenient for folks. And after we had identified the area that we want to challenge, we craft 6-ish, it just seemed like a good number, fairly broad questions about what's happening in this area. So the first year, by way of example, the board decided that what we wanted to tackle was there is this drive for new law graduates to deliver value faster than they ever had to before, that they need to develop strategic partnerships with their clients faster. What does that mean? What does that mean for you? We break people up. We segregate them. So we have the junior attorneys, and we have the senior attorneys, and then we have the GCs, and we have managing partners, we have the alternative service platform people. We have them all talking to themselves. And they go off and they spend a couple of hours. It's a working forum. It's not a talking forum, is our mandate. And they spend a couple of hours talking. I have student associates who are embedded with those groups, facilitating the conversation, preparing reports, doing transcripts. Then they come back to a plenary session, and then we have the reports the groups report out, and we get them arguing based on what the services sector don't shockingly agree as to what the answers to those problems might be. We take that information, we try to enact some design principles for the year. We've put a detailed report together of what came out of those individual groups, and we look for the common threads that are shot through all of the groups. What are the areas of agreement about what needs to be tackled with regard to the challenges and the response questions that we got? We report that out. We have another meeting with our advisory group, and during that time, after we've identified those commonalities between the reports, we craft a design challenge. And we say something along the lines of, develop a learning experience that gives students the opportunity to develop these skills. I'm being fairly oblique about it, right? And we go back to the group of individuals that are in our network, that are active in our network, and we put together design teams. We call it a design charrette. I get much grief about that, but we stole it from architecture. This idea that instead of talking about individual problems, we send design teams with various experts in different areas. We break those walls down that we had segregated during the forum. We put them together. We put junior and senior together. We put GCs together, et cetera, et cetera. And we asked them to spend 2 months working together to design a learning experience around that charge that they've been given. So they go off and they work for 2 months. They're incredibly active. These are, as you might imagine, the folks that we bring into the room are from the highest echelons of legal practice, from different industries, et cetera, et cetera. They work really hard, and they take it. I shouldn't sound shocked, but I've been shocked every year about how these incredibly busy people spend so much time on these projects. We have a design charrette at the end of the design process. Folks come back. We've been hosted every year at 1871, which is a tech incubator, an innovation incubator in Chicago. They've been very gracious to us, and we spend a day and a half where the groups, 5 or 6 groups of 5 or 6 individuals, just seems to be the number that comes out, present their designs. We call it a design charrette because in architecture, engineering groups, designers and engineers and lighting designers, et cetera, would design a solution. They'd bring it out in their carts, and everyone would come together and take a look at what everyone else did. And then as a group, they would go from divergent ideas on how to solve a problem or exploit an opportunity to one convergent idea. So all of the design ideas that come out of these events about a learning experience, the roof comes off one, the doors are expanded on the other one, the lights are shifted around, and we put one convergent design together coming out of that. That's the process we've engaged. We've done it 2.5 times. The first iteration was this idea of how can we, what does it mean for our students to add value to the client relationship earlier? And there were a bunch of aptitudes, many of which I will talk about in a minute when I talk about the anecdata. And they put together a really great, in my opinion, I don't have no authorship in this, they came up with it, this week-long simulation experience that we've beta tested twice now. As an intersession course where students come to the law school voluntarily during winter break in Chicago, and partake in this simulation course that is not, there's very little law. The only law in the simulation is the law I made up. And I've created a set of client problems that reveal themselves with additions to the fact pattern day after day after day. And they present problems of client relationships that we as lawyers in private practice face. Questions like, how do you manage a team? How do you deliver difficult information to a client in a way that's constructive and is useful to that client? How do you make the case that you are the law firm that should handle it? How do you display that you can improve process or manage projects? I was so excited that you guys were doing that those were skill sets that were coming out because everyone is telling me about that externally. So, and finally, how do you make a pitch? How do you convince your client that you should take on a case? And so it's all sort of relationship management and building, and that's what the marketplace was telling us. We had an enrollment cap the first year of 30 students. We filled to 30 and had probably 20 on the wait list for it to come to Chicago in January before classes start. We capped the enrollment the second year at 60. We had 60 filled with 20 on the wait list, and part of this is actual simulation. So you'll be presented a problem. There's content delivery by external experts, no academics. All people who consult to the industry come in and talk to our students. They want to come and talk to our students. They're sort of self-interested, but they've been really great in devoting their time. Students go off and work. Then I have, from that network, alums, GCs, senior individual, managing partners, hiring partners come in, and there's a simulation period where the students present their solution to whatever aspect of the problem we gave them that day. They come back. All of these folks debrief with them and spend a lot of time. It's been successful, I'm willing to say at this point. And we're hoping to scale that to not only increase the enrollment, but also possibly roll it out as something that will be required during a January term for all of our students. That was based on a lot of the things, the anecdata that the marketplace has been telling us about. Let me tell you about the the 1.5 iterations of that design process. The second year, one of the things that kept coming up, the first year, one of the things that kept coming up is that in order to deliver client value and develop relationships, you have to be aware of, wait for it, technology. Now, most of the people in the room had no idea what they meant by technology, but they knew it was something they should say, right? And so we spent a year trying to figure out what the marketplace meant when they said technology. And I will tell you that, I will admit, I should say, is that the fruits of that second iteration were informative, but no learning experience came out of it. First of all, every time when we had our design charrette that year, we were kind of going, yeah, we've got this innovation lab thing, we're doing it. Yeah, we got this innovations lab, we're doing it. Yeah, we're working on a coding class. So all of the things were sort of already in the pipeline, but nothing was similar enough because there was still not sufficient agreement about what exactly that meant, right? And certainly not as sophisticated as the things that are going on in the innovation labs, right? The last attempt we made, that was this year, and we decided to talk about communication, because that keeps coming up. Well, they have to communicate better. And what happened was we decided to table the design event this year because, again, it was hard for people to express, to communicate what they meant by communication. And it was everything from writing complete sentences would be nice, shaping paragraphs, to understanding different proprietary communication platforms that clients are requiring. And it moved all the way over to this idea of leadership behaviors and emotional intelligence, and it just didn't work. So we're tabling that, and next year we're going to be working on leadership behaviors, about what does it mean for a lawyer to take ownership and leadership in solving a client's problem, a lot of which involves communication skills, right? At least that's what's been coming out. So that's what's happening at the center. I aggregate, I had to have 3 E's. It's a little bit of an obsession for me to have 3 categories and have them all start with the same letter. I'm sorry, my therapist is working on it. The words seem a little squishy up on the screen there, but I want to break them out a little bit and sort of explain what that meant. This was my attempt to aggregate some of the things we've been hearing, all of the things actually that we've been hearing from the marketplace about what law graduates need when they, beyond the table stakes of the best and best possible legal reasoning skills, substantive legal knowledge skills, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's just table stakes. What else do employers want? What do clients want? What do different kinds of institutions want to see? What would distinguish a brand new lawyer in the marketplace? And these words actually came out. So empathy, entrepreneurship, and emotional intelligence, despite what I said, are just constant themes about what we hear in all of these design forums. And we're trying to understand what that means. Empathy means, for the participants, understanding the client's imperatives, goals, and culture. Underneath that, in a more granular sense, is that if you are going to be in a practice area that you are going to be representing an industry or a particular client, do the homework and understand that you need to know a lot about what that client does. And it sounds intuitive and basic and commonsensical, but we don't get at that. right? We often do not get at that in law school, that sensitivity to understanding what's going at your client. How does your client assess risk and measure success? Which is related to goals, obviously, but what exactly does it mean to succeed? Right? How much risk is too much risk? How does your client evaluate that? What's important? How do you have conversations around that? Solve the client's problems, not the laws, right? Uniformly, every client, every GC that we talk to, every corporate legal operations person that we talk to are also around our table. Just talk about, please teach your students that those memos they wrote were really important learning tools in law school. They should never, ever send one to us, right? It's this idea of don't tell me what the law allows or does not allow. Know that. Do whatever small measure of CYA you need to do on the back end, right? But solve the problem. These are all related, right? So how do you know what the client's problem is, what they want resolved, if you don't know how they assess risk and measure success, and if you don't know what the ultimate goals are for what they're trying to achieve in their institutions? Speak the client's languages. That runs the gamut from just knowing how your client wants content delivered, right, on one end of the spectrum. The other end is when you are solving their problem and you're assessing their risk and understanding their goals and culture, you need to have basic financial awareness. You need to be able to read a balance sheet. You need, those are languages, right? You have to communicate those resolutions in ways that are meaningful to the client. And you can't expect the client to just interpret, here's what the law allows and here's what the law does not allow. You have to be able to do that for them in a way that they understand. Entrepreneurship. Add value to a strategic partnership, respect economies, improve process, and anticipate problems. They want new lawyers, and again, I'm just reporting out. Okay, I can quibble with all of these. They want lawyers that, again, add value to the strategic partnership, knowing what's going on with their clients. And also an important takeaway is that understand that for the first 5 years, maybe, the single most important client that new lawyers work for is the law firm, right? So this applies not only to who is the recipient of the legal services, but also the institution through which the legal services are being delivered. And all of the same questions can be asked about their law firms as they can about their ultimate clients, right? I'm just going to talk a little bit about respecting economies that relates back to this idea of speaking the client's languages and understanding their business. Process improvement and project management come up all the time. That is probably the most consistent skill set that the market has been telling us thus far. Understand how to build your team, how to follow budgets, how to iterate budgets, how to keep communication flowing, how to keep projects on time, but then also apply whatever technologies are available to streamline the delivery of these services. So all of these applications that I heard about this morning, which were amazing, by the way, and thank you, were things that clients would be really excited about, that law firms would love to talk about to their clients, but the marketplace is telling us about that. And anticipate problems. They want so much, they're telling me, you to understand the client's imperatives, goals, and culture, that they want not only the ability to respond to a problem in a way that solves the problem, that is useful to the client, but they want that you also to anticipate those problems. What do you see coming? And that requires all of those things. One of the mantras for the center that has come out of all of these hours and hours and hours and hours of conversation that I've been having and others have been having in the context of this design process, but also a large part of what I've been doing for the last few years is informally going and talking to all these folks and sort of developing support and input from stakeholders in the output of legal education to inform legal education best practices. And the mantra that's come out of all of those hours of conversation is that new lawyers need to be entrepreneurs, which is not to say that they need to develop the next app, right? Or gross out their business. They need to be entrepreneurs over their careers and engage in an entrepreneurial relationship with their clients and their firms. Right? They need to take ownership of it. They need to innovate. Clients, in addition to, or lawyers, in addition to being entrepreneurs, they need to be futurists. Now, they don't say technologists, but they say futurists. It's becoming table stakes in the marketplace, from what I'm hearing, that maybe they don't need to know how to code. There's debate about that. I fall on one particular side. I think that's one of the languages that new lawyers should know about. But you need to know about the technological drivers of change, the technological drivers of new kinds of problems that clients will face, and the technological drivers that will, in the future, change the way your client has problems resolved, and the way ethical conundra can arise, both for you and the clients. So they need to be entrepreneurs, they need to be futurists, and the third is that they need to be leaders. Now that's really squishy, right? And a lot of the stuff that comes under this leadership idea, and I'm looking forward to our design process next year to tease out a little more detail about that, but it's these ideas of emotional intelligence. And I know it's something that sometimes we feel uncomfortable talking about, and I certainly feel uncomfortable talking about it in the context of whether or not a bunch of law professors can actually teach emotional intelligence. Set that aside for a second. But really, things like listening and collaborating, this was my favorite one, practicing situational awareness and humility. Have courage of your convictions, which might seem contradictory to the previous bullet, and recognize your authority, what you bring to the table. And so then when I hear these things, I say, okay, those all sound really, really great. How do we teach that in law school? Right? How do we teach any of this in law school? Right? Knowing, number one, in my opinion, that an off-the-shelf B-school course in any of this would fail to fully embrace the iteration of these things that are in many ways unique to the lawyer-law-client relationship. But also, given the things that Dan said about this fairly staid, hidebound way we think about curriculum, how can we do that? And the way we do that, frankly, is the best thing that might come out of an innovation lab course might not be an app, might not be a new entrepreneur, but might be a lawyer that's learning about process improvement, that's learning about listening and collaborating with other people around a design problem, a problem solution, right? And what everyone keeps saying is that simulation, iteration, simulation, iteration, simulation. Give students the opportunities to be in those kinds of situations. This recognize authority, something that folks have been telling me a lot, is that students will go through 3 years of law school, they'll come in and not realize the power of their voice. Right? That you actually want them to take responsibility and ownership over proposing creative solutions to problems. And so they want new lawyers to have the courage of their convictions, but they also want them to understand their situational awareness and humility. Right? So have a voice, know that you are empowered to speak, but listen and understand where you are and who your audience is. Again, these feel very soft, a lot of them, but it seems to me, and I don't know if this is a function of the changes in the marketplace, that these kinds of skills keep coming up more and more. If it's a generational situation where there's a sense that these softer skills, setting aside the top two, right, that are lacking in some way, or that we need to inculcate them better. Maybe it's, maybe you could speak to this better than I can, Gwen, this idea that law firms are finding it harder to do those kinds of things or expend resources in that way, given everything that's going on. But anyway, that's what we're hearing. I hope that gave some fodder about what we're hearing about how to change the educational model. I don't know how to get at process improvement. I don't know how to get at assessing risk and measuring success. I would love to have more data on what law firms think that means, what clients think that means. Are there applications or process improvements that we can bring to bear, not only in the delivery of legal education, but in training our students how to deliver those services better? That's what I got. Any questions? No questions. There's no questions? I want.